Dog Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues with the most controversial in the world. Rabbi Chaim Kaufman, welcome back. Always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us and tackling these crazy topics.
Wait a minute, if I'm crazy in the world, that means everywhere, right?
I know, right?
That means like different planets also, like, Martians. I'll be more controversial than them.
There you go. And I'll see what happens here. And so, and the weeks coming up, we're going to be discussing a lot of stuff regarding the oral law, the basically the outrageous claims of. There's a lot of outrageous claims from Christianity about the oral law that they get from their certain sources. So we're going to start tackling those starting next week. So today, can men? Now, when you say can men listen to women sing, is it specifically all men or just like Jewish men or Orthodox Jewish men? Or so definitely clarify all that if you don't mind. Chad, welcome.
And what if I do mind? That's it. It's been a great show. Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Very good.
Yeah, we should have clarified because I got myself in a little bit of hot water. Someone, made a whole post.
So the clarification is Jewish men?
Yes.
Okay.
It applies to Jews.
Because I need to edit the title.
It doesn't apply, to non-Jews. Even though maybe I might say it's a moral imperative. I don't, if you hold that a woman's voice is licentious, okay, right? That's what we're going to talk about.
That's what we need to know. Okay, very good.
So if that's the case, maybe, maybe for non-Jews also, but definitely does not apply in general to non-Jews. So we're going to see, the parameters, of, what this is, why it is, and obviously, anyone who's got an agenda, i.e., feminists and all that, they're going to hate this, or modern Orthodox women or whatever. They're just going to, claim that there's not a problem. Like someone had texted and said that, I sing in my Orthodox synagogue with men. Now, I don't know what type of Orthodox synagogue that it is, right? But we're going to see, according to the vast majority of rabbinic authorities, that 100% is going to be forbidden. And some are going to hold it's forbidden on a Torah level. So, we have to see what type of singing, we're talking about. Does it have to do with, let's say you don't know the woman. Let's say, she sings, a video, right? You know who she is. Let's say, or better, it's a song. Right, you don't know who she is. You don't recognize her, anything else. So let's say maybe that wouldn't apply. Or maybe it's only going to apply, if you see her, right? Or doesn't mean what type of song are we talking about? Are we talking about any song? Are we talking about, let's say, Shabbos songs? So that's the whole question. If we're talking about, recordings or broadcasts or, anything else. So the source, anyone who wants to look it up, the source is Tractate Brachot 24a, which states the following. It says the voice of a woman is erva. Erva means licentiousness. That's what it means, immoral, right? Now, let's just make clear. It doesn't say women can't sing, right? I was taking a test for that also. We'll speak about, right? She's allowed to sing. But she's not allowed to sing in front of men, right? In front of Jewish men. There might be a problem with singing even in front of non-Jewish men because that might be an issue of modesty. It might be modesty issue. But here we're speaking specifically of the voice of a woman for a Jewish man. Right now, does that apply to his wife? What about his wife? Maybe that applies, maybe it doesn't apply. What about his kids? We're going to see. But the statement is the voice. It's interesting. The statement is the voice of a woman, Brachot 24a, the voice of a woman is considered erva, as it states in Shir HaShirim, in Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 14. Song of Songs, King Solomon says, let me hear your voice because your voice is pleasant, in appearance attractive. So what do we learn out? We learn out from a verse in Song of Songs that a woman's voice is pleasant. It's definitely pleasant. Now, interesting enough, that is the entire statement. That's what the Talmud says. Normally, maybe you'd have, okay, this rabbi says like this, another rabbi says like this, and then there's a whole discussion. Why don't you say like this over here or this over there, or all kinds of different things. And in the end, it's a statement that seemingly nobody disagrees, right? Everyone is in agreement over here. Now, if everyone is in agreement over here, what's the question? How does it apply? What does it apply to? So it comes on Rashi. Rashi explains in that verse in Song of Songs, he says a woman's voice is attractive to a man. That's what Rashi learns. And therefore, since a woman's voice is attractive to a man, prohibited. Now let's make clear. I was taking a task, and I want to flush this out, and that is that the drive, the sexual drive. We're going to keep this PG-13, so at least we don't get banned here. And that is, it's probably the strongest desire that a person has. Now, obviously, it's different for a man than a woman. Could be a woman also has a strong drive, but in general, it's by a guy, and a person will say, well, if that's true, and Rashi explains that a woman's voice is attractive, well, doesn't he have an obligation to control himself? And the answer is yeah. There's no question. He has that obligation. Now, when we say the Shema twice a day, we say that you're not allowed to go after your heart and after your eyes. Right? Now, who does that apply to? The Rambam says applies to men and women. So guys are not allowed to look at women. Women shouldn't look at guys, right, as well, because just, they might get excited, whatever the case is, right? So there's a prohibition on both sides. For a man and a woman, they have to control what they see. They should control what they hear. But when it comes to, again, hear a woman's voice to a woman, no, we don't say that. It's only by a man. It's only by a man. So it comes along with Rav Hai, right, in the year 900 or so. Rav Hai explains that the restriction applies. There's a specific restriction here. And he says the restriction applies to a man who's saying the Shema. It's only a case, he says, others disagree, but we're going to throw this out there. He's only talking about a case where a guy is saying the Shema. Now, what's the problem? He's going to be saying the Shema. He's in the middle of prayer, and he hears a woman singing. He's going to get distracted. That's what's going to happen. She's going to sing. Her voice is tantalizing, as Rashi says. Right? Doesn't say the exact language, but he says it's attractive, means similar thing. So therefore, he's going to get distracted. If he's going to get distracted, forbidden. Right? Forbidden in that case. Comes on the code of Jewish law. Comes on the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says, Kol Isha, restriction applies not only to Kriyat Shema, not only to saying of the Shema, but it applies in other contexts. So he disagrees. Right? Sorry, I forgot to mention the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, mentions that he disagrees with Rav Hai, right? And he says that this Gemara is referring to all situations. Doesn't just apply to saying the Shema, right? It applies to saying the Shema in other situations. So it comes on the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch says and rules that goes like the Rosh. He goes like the Rosh and he explains that it applies not only to prayer, not only to the Shema, but it applies to other things also, right? Applies to other things, right? That's in Or Chaim 75, Halacha 3. And in Even HaEzer, it applies in chapter 21, Halacha 2. Now, the Rav Moshe Isserles, he's Ashkenazic psak over here. The Shulchan Aruch is Sephardic, right? Most things they agree on. The Ramah has his glosses on the Shulchan Aruch where, he clarifies or disagrees. And he clarifies the prohibition applies to a woman's singing voice. If she talks, that's not a problem, right? She can talk as much as she wants. Her voice itself, if she talks, is not considered attractive. She might talk in a soft way and other things, but that's not attractive. What's attractive is the fact that she sings. Singing is a problem. Now, also, the Rambam, as the Shulchan Aruch goes like him many times, the Rambam holds, and others as well, that there's a question, right? There's a question over here. There's a question over here whether hearing a woman sing for a Jewish guy, is a Torah prohibition or it's a rabbinic prohibition, right? So Ravaji Yosef, in his response in section 1, halacha 6, he says it's a Torah prohibition, but he says also that their opinions hold it's rabbinic, right? He says there's a biblical prohibition, but he goes according to the ones that hold that it's rabbinic. In either case, whether it's a Torah obligation or a Torah prohibition, or it's a rabbinic prohibition, it's forbidden, right? No, it's not going to matter over here, right? We're not going to get caught up. It's rabbinical, it's Torah, it's forbidden in either case. So some would say, come on, what's going on over here? Why would it apply today? Some are going to claim that we are accustomed to hearing a woman's voice. So if we're accustomed to hearing a woman's voice, let's say, a person listens to a specific singer. So they know her voice. So if they know her voice, what's the problem? So he says that's a misnomer. It's not true. Right? Not true. Even if he recognizes the voice or we're accustomed to hearing a woman's voice, doesn't matter. So they explain over here that since the code of Jewish law comes along and says it's forbidden, and again, we're going to go like Rashi and explain that a woman's voice is attractive, right? So the question is going to be, does it apply to prayer, to the Shema, or does it apply to other things as well, right? So therefore, if that's what the code of Jewish law says, then who are we to say that doesn't apply? Now, we are going to see, there is an opinion. There is an opinion. I'll throw that out there. There is an opinion. The fact that that a man can listen to a woman's voice, right? There is such an opinion. That was what went on in Germany. I think that was a German opinion, right? That holds that was the case. That that it should be okay, and not necessarily everybody agreed. Not everyone agreed. Certainly with that opinion, but there is such an opinion, right? We'll throw that out there, right? There is such an opinion. Right, as we're going to see. Now, the question is, where does it apply? Where does it apply over here? Right, we're talking about the fact that if the code of Jewish law says it's forbidden, so people are going to say it's permissible, where we're going to find the permissibility here. And does it apply, what does it apply to? Now, the Gemara seems to say it clear. The Gemara tells us that the voice of a woman is licentious, right? Now, there's no distinction. So the Gemara makes absolutely no distinction. If the Gemara doesn't make any distinction, there's no hint to a possibility that the prohibition might not apply. In other words, you tell me there's a difference of opinion. One rabbi's like this, another rabbi's like that. You can say, well, maybe we can go according to a lenient opinion. There is no lenient opinion. The Gemara says it's forbidden, right? Totally forbidden. Now, there not only that, but if some are going to claim that today people are accustomed to hearing a woman's voice, well, somebody would have said it. Someone in the Talmud would have said it. One of the commentaries would have said it, right? But all recognize rabbinical authorities. Let's repeat that. Just want to make sure people understand. All recognized rabbinic authorities agree this prohibition applies, right? They apply. Now, what does it apply to? There's considerable disagreement regarding the scope of what the prohibition is. What about Zmiros? Zmiros means singing Shabbos songs at the Shabbos table, right? So the question of that's been discussed. So we have in the Sridei Eish, Rav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, one of the Torah giants of the last generation, and he brings down his response in the Sridei Eish, and part 2, halacha 8, that really women refrain from singing Shabbos songs where there were males who are not family members sitting at the Shabbos table. So he brings down a response, forbidden. If it, not someone in your own family, right? Your own immediate family, your own nuclear family, right? If it's somebody else, not a relative, let's say a brother-in-law, not a blood relative, can't sing in front of him, right? That would be forbidden. So he's saying it's forbidden across the board, forbidden. Now, he does record a practice in Germany, and that's what I was referring to before, that women sang Zmiros in the company of unrelated men. So now all the feminists are going to jump up and down and say, see, look what it says over here, right? I'm going to be open-minded a little bit, right? We'll bring down this opinion that there was an opinion, a practice in Germany. Women sang Shabbos songs in the company of unrelated men. So again, if it's a nuclear family, everyone's related, right? Your own family, not a problem. Women can sing in front of their brothers. Not a problem. Brother-in-laws, forbidden. Uncles, forbidden. Grandfather, that would be permissible. That would be definitely permissible. But any other blood relative, 100% would be forbidden. Comes along the practice in Germany, says the Sridei Eish, says Rav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, that he says there was such a custom. There was such a custom that women sang in front of men that weren't related to them. He records Rav Azriel Hildesheimer, one of the giants of the German community, and Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. Most people hopefully have heard of him. 2 great German rabbis in the 19th century. And they sanctioned this practice. And they said it was okay. Now, why? Why is it okay? Because the Gemara Megillah 21b says, 2 voices cannot be heard simultaneously. Meaning that if you have more than one person sing, unless the person really sings very soft, but if you hear 2 people sing, you're not going to hear one voice. They're sort of going to mesh, right? 2 voices cannot be heard simultaneously. So they rely on that ruling of the Talmud to say if a woman sings, no big deal, because they're not going to hear the voice anyway. So comes along Rav Weinberg and he says, I disagree. This is not a good answer. Why? Why? Because the Gemara states, Sota 48a, anyone who wants to look it up, think I'm blowing smoke here, writes that men and women singing together is a major impropriety. Now, a person could forget about going the majority. We're going to speak about that, right? But let's call a spade a spade. You have to understand how Jewish psak, or how they get to the final law, how it works. And most of the time, you go according to the majority, right? There are times you can rely on a minority opinion. Depends for what and what circumstances. Again, it's not a general rule, but you have to see how it applies. So, someone will quote me out of context, of course, and they say, says you can rely on a lenient opinion. Depends when, depends what the circumstances are. It depends on a lot of different factors. So I'm pointing out there is an opinion that, German practice says it's okay, right? You got Rav Azriel Hildesheimer, Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, 2 giants, 2 German giants, right? 2 German giant rabbis. I mean, not giants like big, but whatever. They were Torah giants, right? They're not slouches over here, God forbid, right? Now, comes along the Sridei Eish, Rav Weinberg, and he says, I got a problem, though. I got a problem with this proof. I got another Gemara. And that Gemara states clear. Make no mistake. It states clear. Men and women singing together is a major impropriety. Major impropriety. Men and women are supposed to be separate. Where do we learn it out from? Most people don't know. Where do we learn out when men and women pray together they should be separate? Learn it out from the temple. The temple that was in Jerusalem had a separate seating, right? Men were on the bottom, women were on the top. They were separate. What's the reason? So you can have proper intention, not look at women or vice versa, right? You have to have proper intention. When you pray, a person's going to get distracted if he sees women. You're going to say, that's not a woman's fault. I didn't say it was. There's a reality, right? What are the odds of a person walking down the street? What are the odds? And I'll get in trouble for saying this also, but this is why we do controversial issues. A girl walks by, men look. I'm not saying it's right. Definitely not saying it's right. If a man walks by, girls look, that's okay. Maybe today's changed. Maybe women are just like men in this category. Maybe they also look at men. Maybe they also stare, right? Maybe they do, right? I think it's more of a guy thing because I'm a guy, right? I definitely think it's more of a guy thing. And I definitely think it's certainly hormonal for a guy. It's normal, but it's not something that should be done, right? Because the person can get punished for their thoughts. Brought this down last week in my class in the book of Leviticus. One of the commentaries states explicitly, person can get punished for their thoughts. We get punished for going after our eyes and after our hearts. Applies to men, applies to women. I'm just pointing out, I think when it comes to, to looking at someone of the opposite sex, I think a man is much more guilty than a woman. But it could be today's changed, right? I could be totally wrong. Could be now it's even or very close. I don't think so, but, could very well be. Point is, the Gemara says explicitly, men and women shouldn't sing together. It's a major impropriety. So now, even if you tell me, but I have Rabbi Hirsch, I have Rabbi Hildesheim, right? I have opinions that say, that is okay. But what about the opinion that say it's a Torah prohibition? What about the vast majority of rabbinic authorities say it's forbidden? They say, so what's someone going to say? I want to rely on them. That's not how Psak works, right? I want to explain that, if there's a majority opinion, unless you have a strong minority opinion, and under circumstances you'd say, okay, you can rely on this for X reason, it's one thing. And there are certain things we do rely on, right? There could be many things we rely on certain leniencies for. Okay, but again, a woman can say, I want to sing with men. I have a desire to sing with men. Okay, that doesn't mean it's right. And someone's going to hear me and say, but men have the problem. They do. So what? That doesn't change anything. That does not change the fact that Rashi explains, as we said before in the verse in Song of Songs, that he says a woman's voice is attractive. That doesn't change. So you're going to say, well, a guy shouldn't have thoughts while he's listening to a woman. I agree. But that does not change the fact that that's the case. It's a woman's voice when she sings, not when she talks. So even if it's a guy's problem, it doesn't change anything over here. So now, even if you want to tell me, I want to rely on what the Rav Simpson Rafal says. And I want to rely on that because I want to sing with men. What do you do with this other Gemara over here? This other Gemara states clear it's an impropriety. Impropriety. I want to make sure I say it right. It's an impropriety, major impropriety. When the Gemara says something like it's a big problem, it's a big problem. It's not just like, oh, it's just forbidden, whatever. No, this is a pretty serious thing. So he says, so interesting enough, Rabbi Weinberg brings down from, in defense, this German Jewish practice by saying that women singing Shabbos songs or singing songs to children or lamentations for the dead are okay, even if they sing it in front of men. Why? Because it's not the same thing. He's claiming, and again, others would just say it's clearly forbidden, but he claims, and he's making the claim that what? That if they sing Shabbos songs, it's not about being licentious. That's not what it is. You tell me, Rashi says, right? We understand. A woman's voice can be enticing. But in these cases, it's not enticing. She's singing songs to her children. That's not enticing. And if I got, if someone not related to her hears it, well, it's his problem. I would agree. That's his problem. It's not a form of enticing, over here. So in that case, what are we saying? We're saying that men don't derive pleasure from a woman's voice. So in that case, we maybe would say it's okay. Now, don't we know also in Judges chapter 5, verse 1, tells me Devorah, who was a prophetess, she sang a song of praise to Hashem together with Barak, the son of Avinoam. Now, the issue is, some say she's married to Barak. That's not a problem, right? But if she was really married to Lapidot and not Barak, right? That's according to simple explanation. So then you'd say, okay, see, you get another proof. Get another proof over here, right? That she should be allowed to. Why should she be allowed to? Should be allowed to because, again, we have a source over here, right? But the source he's quoting from that says, in this case, maybe it's okay, says in the end, it's proper to be strict and not follow this approach. But he says the lenient opinion is viable. In this case, we're talking about, again, singing Shabbos songs. Singing songs to children. Now, someone may make the claim, I'm in synagogue. If I'm singing praises to God, how is that licentious? But we saw before, we have major commentaries that say, a person can't hear a woman sing in the middle of prayer. He's going to get distracted. So even if they're singing, let's say, today is Rosh Chodesh, the new month, right? We got 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. So you sing Hallel, you sing half Hallel, the Psalms 145 to 150, right? So let's say in synagogue they sang it. You got women who are singing it, but that's prayer, isn't it? Person should be concentrating on prayer as well. They don't want to get distracted. Same thing as the Shema. We'd say that would be forbidden, right? That would be forbidden. So Rav Weinberg says that we shouldn't pressure women who want to follow traditional practice to sing Shabbos songs in a mixed group. Nonetheless, again, we're not talking about singing in the synagogue. Singing in the synagogue, he would hold is forbidden. Right? That we're talking about singing Shabbos songs. That's what we're talking about. There are many rabbinical authorities, let's make clear, that disagree with this practice of German Jewry. That what do they argue? What do they argue over here? They argue that, again, we make no distinction. We make no distinction over here. So, in that case, it should be forbidden. Now, how does this play out? So it plays out whether this prohibition of listening to a woman for a Jewish man, right? How does it play out when it comes to singing Shabbos songs? So really, it's unresolved. But the ultra-Orthodox communities, the Haredi communities, as they're known in Israel and North America, are stringent. I've never been in a Shabbos table. I can tell you, been in a lot of different communities in South America, in America, here in Israel. Never seen in an ultra-Orthodox community that women sing in front of men. Never seen it, right? You don't see it. It's not seen, right? But modern Orthodox communities in Israel and North America go according to German Jewry over here, and they say it's okay, right? It's okay. There's a difference. They have who to rely on. I'm not saying not, right? But let's call a spade a spade. Most rabbinic authorities hold you shouldn't do it. You want to tell me I'm modern Orthodox, I want to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to rely on them. Okay? Right? And that's what people will do. But let's, again, I'm very big into statistics. I'm very into calling a spade a spade. Who's the majority in the Orthodox community today? Is it you'll say unaffiliated. Okay, fine. Majority of Jews today are secular and unaffiliated. Fine. Right? Even the ones that are reform or conservative. Fine. Right? Let's say they're in the majority. They're going to die out. Doesn't matter. We spoke about that. In the Orthodox community, America, Canada, South America, Australia, Europe, Israel. Who is the majority? Nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. Who is the majority when it comes to Orthodox Jewry? We are. The ultra-Orthodox Jews. Case in point, a number of years ago, Chief Rabbinate here in Jerusalem appointed 22 new rabbinic court judges. 15 out of 22 came from which community? The ultra-Orthodox community. You do the math, that's 58%. Now you can say that's discrimination. It had nothing to do with discrimination. They're taking the ones that are best qualified. And there's a reason, I've spoken about it, that's not really the topic for now, but the vast majority of Orthodox Jews in the world today are ultra-Orthodox, Hasidic, whatever you want to call them. The modern Orthodox are a minority. They're a minority, a clear-cut minority. Right? So they want to go according to their tradition. Okay? They are, but they're the minority. It's a minority opinion. So someone says, I belong to a modern Orthodox community, that's what I do. Okay? In the majority of the Orthodox world, it's not done. It's not, I can tell you, it's not done. Right? So I have who to rely on. Okay, you have who to rely on. I like to go according to, the majority as best as possible. There are people that, have whoever opinion they want to rely on, and they can transgress, tremendous things. I'll just give one example. I don't want to get political, which I never get political in any of my classes, especially this. Right? What about going on to Har HaBayis? Right? The Temple Mount. Temple Mount, if a Jew goes up there, a non-Jew can go up there. If a Jew goes up there, it's liable to be spiritually cut off. Why? Because we're not sure. We're not sure exactly where the Holy of Holies are, etc. The vast majority of rabbinic authorities today hold nothing to talk about. You're not allowed to go up there. But you see Orthodox Jews go up there. They claim they know where they're going, this, that. The majority opinion is you don't do it. That's the majority opinion. Now, there's another issue. Right, I'm just going to throw out there. They say, I rely on this opinion. I have, my rabbinical authority who says that. But going up on the Temple Mount causes a lot of political friction. A lot of political friction because the Arabs are going to take it as an affront. And what are they going to do? They're going to say, this is my religion. I'm going to die for it. We're all going to die for it. They're going to wage war. Though people say, but we have a right to go up there. It's ours, right? If we don't go up there, they'll think it's theirs. No. They know whose it is. They know who it belongs to. I don't think there's any question about that. But they want to hold fast that if you do anything against, quote unquote, their religion, they're going to fight to the death. Now, even if you want to tell me it's a minority opinion, right? It's a very small minority opinion, if that, but that could put people in danger. So if someone want to rely, and people do, not going to say it's right, people do, and they'll go up there and they put the Jewish community in Israel in danger. In danger. That's what happens. And the Arabs go nuts because they think, oh, we're claiming their religion, blah, 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 going against their religion. So going according to a minority opinion is not always the best idea. I'm just pointing out the majority opinion here is not like that. Majority opinion says women shouldn't do it and that it's forbidden. So a person wants to hold according to the smaller camp. Okay. That's their choice. I'm just pointing out the vast majority don't. The vast majority in the ultra-Orthodox world, whether you say Hasidic, Chabad, yeshivish, whatever label you want to give, they all do not do this or follow this practice, right? They go with the majority opinion over here. Now, the question also is going to be, there's a huge debate whether this applies to recordings or radio broadcasts, right? There's a whole discussion. So, Rebbe Eliezer Waldenberg, one of the Torah giants of the last generation, writes in his Sitz Eliezer, that was his magnum opus, he has 20 volumes or more, his responsum, and in part 5, halacha 2, he rules leniently based on two considerations of listening to a recording, not live. He's talking about a recording. He says, first thing is, the Gemara states in Sanhedrin 45a, that the evil inclination is not interested in what the eyes don't see. In other words, you don't see. You don't see the person. But if you know what the person looks like, maybe you can imagine. But okay, you don't see. The second is technically doesn't hear the woman's voice. This is a technicality, right? The fact that he doesn't hear the woman's voice. Why? Because radio broadcasts, like we're doing over here, we're doing online, Anyone doesn't know, we're online here, right? Anyone out there? Anyway, so we're recording a mere electronic reproduction of the woman's voice. What's he saying? Technically, it's not her voice, right? It's going through radio waves, right? It's going through these waves, so it's not really her voice. But in such a case, we can't fulfill the mitzvah, let's say, hearing the shofar online or through Zoom or whatever. You can't hear the Megillah that way. That would be forbidden, as well. But others say it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter over here. Whether it's her voice, it's not really her voice, you don't see her, that doesn't matter. Listening to a female voice is forbidden, right? He definitely holds, others hold that it's definitely forbidden, and would disagree with this Gemara in Sanhedrin that says that, well, it doesn't apply if there's some form of connection, with the woman, right? So some will say, come on, the man's evil inclination is interested even if he only hears the voice. Again, it's his problem. It doesn't matter, right? He hears the voice. So if he hears the voice, what's the problem? What's the problem? It's forbidden, right? It's not allowed to. Even if you don't know the singer, right? See, there's another leniency some people bring out or potentially bring out, and they'll say, well, what if you don't recognize the person? You wouldn't recognize the person if they walk right in front of you. You have no idea what the person looks like. So even if you're going to tell me you don't know what the person looks like, so what? Right? He still hears a woman's voice. If he hears a woman's voice, it's going to be forbidden. I hear to a certain extent, well, you don't know what the person looks like. Okay, so what? Is he hearing a woman's voice? He's hearing a woman's voice. Right? So and there are a number of rabbinical authorities hold this, right? That even if the listener's not acquainted with the singer, doesn't matter. Still going to be forbidden. There are those that will say that if a person hears a female voice, let's say on the radio, or whatever the case is, and you don't know who the person is, because we mentioned some will say you don't know who it is, it's okay, right? But let's say the person once saw a picture of this singer. They know what the singer looks like. They saw a picture once. That's enough. Now you're putting a face to the voice. So there's another question. What if the person's dead? What if the singer's dead? Right? Singer's dead over here. Doesn't matter. Right? That's not going to matter. Right? I think many rabbinical authorities going to hold that. You're hearing a woman's voice. You have the picture in your mind. Or if not, the life's dead. What's the difference? Right? It shouldn't make any difference. Again, it's an interesting thing that if a woman speaks in a microphone, if she speaks in a microphone, it's not her voice, right? But again, technically speaking, you tell me it's not her voice. So what? It's similar enough. That should be forbidden, right? That should be forbidden. Now, what about a case of a husband and wife where, let's say, so a woman can sing in front of her husband, right? That's not a problem unless she got a period. If she got a period, so we hold that it should be forbidden, right? The many rabbinical authorities, the Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Moshe Feinstein of blessed memory, Rav Avadia Yosef of blessed memory, say that it shouldn't be done, right? That it shouldn't be done, right? So therefore, even though it's his wife, so it would be forbidden. It would be forbidden for her to sing in front of him. What about a daughter got a period? So it doesn't matter, right? That's fine. She can sing as much as she wants, right? It's a question of a person's wife. There is a leniency. I will say there is a leniency that if she got a period, she could sing in front of her husband. There is a leniency, but again, many rabbinical authorities hold that's going to be forbidden. What about the case of a young girl? So Moshe Feinstein and Ravad Yosef, of blessed memory, learn out that in case of need, a person can rely on this prohibition. That the prohibition of hearing a woman doesn't apply to a girl who hasn't got a period yet, right? If she's underage. If she hasn't got a period, then it should be okay. Right? Nothing to talk about where Moshe wrote, even below the age of 11. That she hasn't got a period yet, then she should be allowed to sing. Nonetheless, he writes, men should be strict regarding girls older than the age of 11, right? Because nowadays they get their period by the age of 11. So, someone else brought a proof. I just want to point this out as well. That, in the temple, women sang in front of men. Now, the proof they wanted to bring was a verse in Ezra and a verse in Chronicles that seemed to say that, the Levites were singing, they were playing instruments, and all that. And, one person had, 14 kids, 3 were girls, and they were there playing in song. Now, it seems pretty clear, according to what it says over there, playing in song does not necessarily mean they were singing. Doesn't mean they were singing, right? Totally doesn't mean that. It means they were playing instruments. The question is, how could women have been there, right? That's the whole question, if they're supposed to be separate, right? But let's say for argument's sake they were there. Let's say, even if that would be the case, it does, playing in song does not necessarily mean that they sang. Because what's the context? And we always look at the context when we look at these things. And next week and coming weeks, going to speak about oral law and all these crazy statements seemingly that the Talmud makes, God forbid, and it's all in context. It's all people say it's apologetics, it's this, okay, but it's in context. You got to see the context. So what does the context over there say? They're playing instruments. That's what it says. Playing in song does not necessarily mean that they sang. So I said, okay, let's see. Let me look it up. I'm not the world's greatest expert in Tanakh over here. So okay, so I looked it up. Let me look at the major commentaries, right? Look at Rashi, look at the Radak, look at the Malbim, look at the Barbanel, Metzudas David, Metzudas Sion. These are major commentaries on Tanakh, right? If there's a question, they'll bring it up. So I looked over there, nothing. Doesn't say anything, right? Now, there is a question in the book of Judges, just going to throw this out there, that Devorah is a prophetess, and men came to her to ask them their questions. How could that be? All the commentaries ask the question, what about modesty? How is she allowed to do this? Where does it say they came? The men came? The men came to speak to her under this, fig tree, I think, some sort of tree or whatever, out in the open. Why out in the open? So they couldn't be alone. Why couldn't they be alone? Because they're not allowed to be alone, right? A man and a woman, not his spouse, they're not allowed to be alone, in a secluded area. There are certain, there are certain cases, where that might be the case, whatever. But in general, a man and a woman are not allowed to be alone, right? So now, all the commentaries over there ask the question. It's an obvious question. Right? It's an obvious question here. Why? How can she do it? It's not a question of her knowledge, right? There are women can have, unbelievable knowledge. We're not talking about that per se. That's a different issue, right? But the issue over here is how could they be alone together? How could they sit in a room together? The guy asks this question, she's going to answer. A modesty problem, a tremendous modesty issue. All the commentaries are bothered by that, So the answer that she was in an open place. It wasn't a closed place, right? Sit underneath this tree or whatever. There's a lot of shade, who knows what, right? But people could come in and out. They could see what's going on. So there's no issue there whatsoever. So there, again, the commentaries speak about it because it's an issue. It's a question. Now, if this really would have been a question, I looked it up. If it really would have been a question, the commentaries would have asked. They would have asked the question. How can they be together? How can they sing together? Right? What's another proof someone brought? Look, by Kriyas Yam Suf, the split of the sea, right? What happened? So the Jewish people, they sang Al Yashir Moshe, right? They sang the song, right? Moses, they sang the song of the sea. And then what does it say after that? The women came, Miriam came, she played on cymbals, other things, and all these women came and they sang. So I said, see, you get a proof from that. But it says Miriam went out, the women followed her. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? The Torah doesn't tell me. The Torah doesn't say anything. It just says they went. They went after and followed Miriam. Well, now, what would that lead me to think? In general, it would lead me to think they didn't stay in the same place. That's what it would lead me to think. They didn't stay in the same place for this reason, right? But I could say even better, right? I don't even have to come on to that. I could say even better. Torah wasn't given yet, and if the Torah wasn't given, there were certain mitzvahs that were given, right? Laws of Shabbos. Some of the laws of Shabbos were given. Some other things were given. But here, this law is not given. It's before giving to the Torah, right? That helps to answer, a number of questions, for other things, right? But if we're going to say that the Torah has to be given, so it's not a problem. It's totally not a problem, right? But for someone to bring a proof, see, this is what I want to point out. If someone wants to bring a proof, says, see, this is permitted, but there are certain parameters. There have to be parameters, right? We could ask, there are many questions. You look in the book of Genesis. You go through the book of Genesis, there are 100 questions, thousands of questions of who the patriarchs were. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Were there Noahites? Were they non-Jews? Or as the Talmud says, they kept the Torah before it was given, whatever it looked like, right? Because there's obvious questions. What obvious question? One question is going to be, how did Yaakov, if he kept the Torah before it was given, how did he marry 2 sisters? And you see, when he entered the land of Israel, Rachel dies. How can he marry 2 sisters? One question. Second question, you take Tamar and Yehuda. Now, he didn't know she was dressing up as a prostitute and all this and all that, right? But how's he allowed to be with her? He didn't know. Okay, but there's a whole question whether he stayed with her or not. But even, let's say he did stay with her afterwards. A father-in-law wasn't allowed to be with a daughter-in-law, right? If he kept the entire Torah, how could he have done that? Right? There are questions. There are a number of questions. You go through the book of Genesis that if they really kept the Torah, you got major issues. You got major issues with a number of things. I'll give one other example. That Yaakov marries Rachel. Right? He marries Rachel. And what happens? She gets switched. Right? She gives Leah the signs. And he ends up marrying Leah. Now, he didn't have intention to marry Leah. He had absolutely zero intention. Right? And having relations, that's a form of acquisition. So that's considered marriage. Right? Even according to the Torah, it's considered marriage. So let's say, all right, wakes up and he finds out, hey, it's Leah. I never had intention for Leah. Right? So Talmud says, if you don't have intention for that person, how can you stay married to them? It's a mistake. It's called mekach tos. It's a mistake. They have to get divorced. You never had intention. If you never had intention, how can it be a bindful marriage? Never had intention over here. Right? So if he never had intention, he never should have stayed with her. Right? Again, there are reasons given to try and answer, some of these questions. But if you know other information, if you have other information, these questions are very strong questions, if they're in fact Jewish. So the whole book's never been translated, right? But most of the book itself discusses this whole issue. It discusses the issue, who were the Jews before they were Jews? Before the giving the Torah Mount Sinai. Were they Jews? Were they Noahites? If you tell me they're not Jews, a lot of these questions go by the wayside, right? Now, it's not a problem. Some of them not a, or a lot of them not a problem, right? Wouldn't apply. A lot of these things don't apply to non-Jews. So if that would be the case, we can answer, some of these up very easily. On the other hand, if that's not the case, we got major questions, right? We definitely have major questions over here. So, and the other thing I just want to point out is that, when it comes to Jewish law, a person has to be very careful. We're going to speak about oral law, next coming weeks. But when it comes to Jewish law and final psak, what's the bottom line? I can do it. I can't do it. This and that. A person is not allowed to go according to whatever psak they want. Which means that I can spend the next 2 hours, which you're not going to give me, but this is a huge topic in and of itself. And if someone has an agenda, say I'm relying on this opinion, or they only want to rely on certain lenient opinions that nobody holds by. They say, but it's a valid opinion. Again, if it's an opinion that you only use, in dire straits, and that you can rely on, my own personal life. There's certain things that, I might have had to rely on that normally you don't rely on. But there are other factors going on. Other factors that, okay, you may have to rely on such a thing. I always say it's kind of being a person playing poker, right? You're playing poker, you dealt with a hand. And what's the hand? All single-digit cards, right? 9 times or 10 times out of 10, you lose. You're going to lose. So here you dealt with a bad hand. Now the question is, how do I deal with it? Are there ways around it? Of certain things can I rely on? Now, sometimes there are leniencies you can rely on, right? In general, you would never in a million years rely on it, but they're extenuating circumstances. So if you tell me they're extenuating circumstances, okay, then you have to see. Then you have to see what the leniencies are. How do they apply? Can I apply them? Does it apply? But what often happens is that people use these things and they say, see, I have this opinion. I have this opinion of Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch. So I want to rely on this opinion, right? I have the opinion of Rav Azriel Hildesheimer. Okay, they're not slouches by any stretch. I'm not saying anything against them, God forbid. The vast majority of rabbinical authorities hold not that way, right? But why, again, what's going on over here? Person really wants to sing at the Shabbos table. They have this, it's not about feminism, right? I know they do it. They want to have a connection to God. They want to sing, whatever. Okay, right? But I think a lot of times, and I see by people's comments, and I always say as we say in the Haggadah, by the evil son, you don't give the evil son an answer, right? You blunt his teeth. Why do you blunt his teeth? Because he's got an agenda, right? He's got an agenda. If he's got an agenda, I can't answer an answer. Right? But if I give an answer, I say, listen, the vast majority go like this. I don't care. I'm going according to the minority opinion. Well, but why are they doing it? See, that's my question. And people are going to say it's not a fair question. And okay, you can claim whatever you want. I think it's a fair question. Why do women want to do it? Why do they want to, you can say they have a desire to sing. They want to be close to God. All these things. It may very well be true. At the same time, and this whole thing with women's issues and all that is being in the forefront. Should a woman be out there, singing her lights out, being a star, this, that, in front of others, in front of men, right? If you have, okay, let's say like this. If you had an Orthodox woman and she wants to make a concert and she's going to sing in front of men, that's forbidden, right? Jewish men, forbidden. And in front of non-Jewish men, should also be forbidden. Why? Not because of her voice, because of modesty. What is she doing? Singing in front of men, giving men ideas. You could say, she's dressed appropriately and all that. And it's all the men's fault. It's all the men's fault what they think. You're right. That doesn't change anything. That's putting a stumbling block in front of men. That's a Torah prohibition. If it's Jews, non-Jews might not be such an issue, right? But if she's doing it in front of Jews, for sure it's putting a stumbling block. How is she allowed to do that? If a person dresses in a certain way, I'm not saying, a guy has to do something, whatever. But if a person dresses a certain way, she's saying something to the world. I'm not, a guy has to control his thoughts, got to control what he sees. He's got to be careful with his eyes, 100%. 100%. But, if a person dresses in a provocative way, and let's say they cause someone to look. The guy for sure is forbidden to look. Nothing to talk about. The question is, does she transgress the Torah prohibition of putting a stumbling block in front of someone? And that she does. You say, but it's not her fault. If she puts on a ton of makeup, wears a mini skirt, and you put enough perfume to sink New York City, let's say, you think she's not going to make it, she's walking in the street. I'm not doing anything. I'm just, this is the way I dress. Guys have to deal with it. You're dressing in a little bit of a provocative way. You want to do that? Okay, it's your choice. Everyone has a choice. But if you're going to tell me, if you're going to tell me she doesn't transgress anything, and there's no idea of putting a stumbling block, that's wrong, right? I would say even by a non-Jew, right? Non-Jew, that should apply also. I'm not saying all the modesty laws certainly apply to non-Jews. Not true, right? Definitely not true. But, the onus is definitely on the guy, for sure. But if a woman walks by, and she's dressed to kill in a million different ways, the guy shouldn't look. You're right. 100%. Right? But if she causes him to look, she transgresses. I'm not saying guy has to jump her or anything like that. And, all that, that's forbidden. Obviously, that's forbidden. The person has to be in control. But, when it comes to something like this, the way a person dresses, way a person dresses says something. A woman's voice, also says something. But when people are going to say, well, I do it anyway, and this is what I'm going to do, that's not about Jewish law anymore. And there are plenty of women that do it. Well, who? You want to tell me you're in a minority opinion? Okay. There are a lot of more Orthodox women. I'll just throw this out there. Not all of them, obviously. Right? But there are a lot of Orthodox women that don't cover their hair properly. Right? They're modern Orthodox. Some of them wear a baseball cap, cover 3/4. 3/4, sorry, it's uncovered. The obligation is to cover all of your hair if you're a married woman. Same thing where the Gemara says that a woman's voice is licentious or is attractive, so to her hair, right? Makes no difference. So if a woman has an obligation to cover her hair, which I'm not going to get into now, but if she had an obligation to cover her hair, she has to cover it. If she wears a baseball cap like Mark Fidrich, anyone who remembers Mark Fidrich, had hair coming out like this, right? He's got hair coming out like this, and he wears a baseball cap, that doesn't do anything. Or a woman goes to a conservative synagogue, she puts on the doily, one of these satin, things she sticks on her head, and you can see her hair. That doesn't do anything. She's got to cover it. That's not called covering. The whole hair has to be covered. All of it has to be covered. Whether you want to wear a beret, or a scarf, or a wig, or whatever, right? Whatever's permitted. So, that's okay. But if you're going to cover your hair and most of it's uncovered, so that defeats the purpose. So someone asked me, how can women do that? How can some women do that? The person many years ago told me. Said, I see all these women, and that's how they cover their hair. I said, go ask them. If I'll just say like this, as we're going to end here, right? If, let's say, part of her hair comes out, a hand's breadth, right? A fist, a hand breadth comes out, we're not going to stone her, right? But you're not allowed to do that at the outset. You're not allowed to leave half the hair uncovered. Nobody says that. So why do they do it? They'll say it's good enough I cover my hair. But that's not covering your hair. So again, you can't pick and choose over here. You can't say, I'm going to take this lenient opinion, that lenient opinion. It has to be based on something. So here, okay, they have a basis. Okay? I'm not gonna say they don't have a basis, but the things that someone was quoting doesn't prove anything. Right? Here you get a better proof. Right? I gave you a better proof over here. These other things doesn't prove Miriam saying in front of them. Torah doesn't tell me that. Right? It says she went and she sang. Who says it was in front of women? Right? Not only that, it was before the Torah was given anyway, so it would have been forbidden. Right? But in general, if there's a separation between men and women, in the temple, what are women doing up there? Why should they be up there singing anyway? In general. So you have to ask the question, what's it talking about? But it says over here, okay, I can also read it, but it can be interpreted a number of different ways. Right? And it doesn't say, what someone wants it to say. It doesn't say that. Right? It just says, playing song. Who says that's singing? Playing song, definitely. The context is they're playing instruments. The Levites are singing, okay, but the main thing over there is that they're playing instruments. So now you want to take that and say, well, they also sang. That's a huge jump. It's a huge jump, which the text doesn't say, right? And none of the commentaries say. So you can say, but I say it. Okay, so next week, that's a good segue. Because next week we're going to get into oral law. We're going to see how oral law, works. But in this context, it's got to be based on, you got to see what the commentaries say. If they don't say anything, then it's probably not a question. There's a lot of reasons why it's not a question, as we brought up tonight.
Very good.
And that is a wrap.
And that is the rest of the story. So very good. Thank you guys for tuning
Well,
in.
I couldn't give the rest of the story. You're not going to give me any
No.
time because my
You'll-
name's not Singer, right?
You'll never have time for the rest of the story. I don't think anybody will. So
I can keep going. Don't stop me now.
I know,
Come
right?
on.
That's funny. Well, thank you guys
I'm
for
on a
tuning in.
roll.
Guys, be sure to hit that like button if you like it, and share with your friends. Subscribe to YouTube channel. Turn on all notifications. So YouTube has a way of like sending messages. It's like that you'll get alerts from. So if I post something in the community, just comments or something, if you subscribe and turn on all notifications, you'll even get those comments. And a lot of times I'll put updates in the comments on if we're running late for a show or if something else is coming up. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you again on the other side, Rabbi. You should have a great week. Thank you.
You too.
Whew, man, I tried to hold that one in. Didn't work. See you guys. Bye.
אני אתה אתם תמיד תמיד כולם ביחד חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד איפוק זו העוצמה ויתור